Well, as I said earlier, not only were you going to hear on the Street Beat tonight Mara O'Connell, but you were also going to hear, well, now I guess you could call him a local musician. He's one Gunther, and he's with me right now in the studio.
Good evening, Roger.
And there he is. That's his voice in the background. Doesn't he speak English? Great. Well, how are you doing tonight?
You're not bad at English yourself, Roger.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm an American.
I'm doing fine, Roger. Thanks. Yeah.
Well, we've got some of your music lined up to play. We've got 3 tracks in particular, I believe, and we've got a few albums set aside that are your kind of personal favorites, shall I say.
Yeah.
And you want to tell me about just what this music thing is with you, this itch that you have inside, when it all started?
This itch that I have inside, well, when I was about 4 years old, I guess, thereabouts, I was listening to my uncles playing the accordion. They were playing American music in the local ballrooms in the village. And it sounded very strange. They were also playing a bit of rock and roll later on. And when I was 8 years old, I started playing the recorder myself, like a lot of people in Germany do. I also played the mouth-harmonica, everybody in Germany does. When I was 14, I took up the bass guitar and the double bass.
The double bass?
The double bass, yeah.
Yeah.
That was at school. I was playing in the rock band, which we had in our class. And I was also playing in the chamber orchestra at the school.
Yeah, that's something that often happens in Germany. You often meet German people, and they're well into the classical music as well as being into modern music. You don't find that in many other countries.
You also find that in continental pop music quite a lot. It's not R&B based like American pop music. It's folk and classical music based, really. The arrangements and the instrumentation of the pop music.
Yeah. Would that explain phenomena like Yes coming from England and Elvis Presley coming from the States?
I think it would explain that. And more extreme Tangerine Dream coming from Germany. Yeah.
What do you think of modern German music, speaking of Tangerine Dream?
Modern German music. You're talking about pop music, are you?
I suppose.
What is called krautrock. Some of it is very good, like everything, you get the good and the bad, and you have to take the good with the ugly.
You think there's a great deal of ugly in
There's a great deal of ugly, there is, yeah. And there's always has been a great deal of ugly. Like, people will always tell you music in the 60s has been much better popular music than it is now, But in the 60s there was 90% rubbish, and now there's 90% rubbish,
You think so?
Thank God a lot of the rubbish doesn't make it into the charts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what would you say yourself now? American music is R&B based. I suppose you'd include English with that, and continental music is folk, classical based. And yourself, kind of, here you are in Ireland, which is in the middle, stuck in between. In
Mid-Atlantic, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to draw from everything, from all musical traditions, and I'm trying to come out with something new, which I will eventually, Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, and maybe not next year, but sometime I will. I don't want to be a pop star, I want to be a composer.
A composer, and you have the particular skill of being able to actually sit down and write out a musical score like Ludwig Beethoven sitting beneath the tree.
I'm not as fast as Ludwig Beethoven was, probably, but I've been learning music at school for 13 years. 13 years, yeah. And then after a brief interval at Arts College, I went to college and did science, and I also did a course in electronic music at college.
A course in electronic music?
A course in electronic music.
In a university?
Yeah. At the university.
Yeah.
And through that course, I got my first job in music. I was doing with a guy called Florian Fricke and somebody else who I forget the name of him. We were doing the soundtrack for a film by Werner Herzog called Agweer, the Wrath of God. It's a nice film if you get a chance to see it and listen to the music.
And the music is yours on this film?
Yeah.
And you don't have any of this on tape, do you?
I don't have any of it on tape, no.
Oh,
I don't
shame.
think it's ever been released on record, because it's very abstract, to say the least.
Oh, yeah. Film theme music. Well, speaking of music on tape, let me look at the little tape box that you've given me, and scribbled on it is track 1, song, : Your Age or What You Are.
Yeah, this is a song about a guy who lives next door to you, or just around the block from you and from me and everybody else, I guess. It's about the guy who used to be hip in the 1960s and who's forgot that this is not the 1960s anymore, it's the 1980s. And You know, he just hasn't changed. You know, there's a lot of them around.
Can I ask, what was your technique for recording this so the people at home aren't...
We were waiting for the guy with the technology to show up.
The man with the technology.
The man with the technology and to record us. But he never came because I think you told me he had the bad flu.
Yes, he does, yeah.
That day. So we sat around the cassette recorder and just taped it, you know. And
okay.
Then overdubbed onto another cassette recorder.
Okay.
It's terribly crude. Like.
Terribly crude, anyways.
Terribly
but this is Gunther. What's your last name, by the way?
Berkus, but I'm generally known as Beats because I used to make fashion jewelry at one time.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Gunther Beads, your age or what you are. Here we go. Okay, there you go. Gunther Beads, the German from northern Bavaria, I believe.
Northern Bavaria, yeah.
And what's it like in northern Bavaria, and how did you end up in Cork, Ireland?
It's a long story. My family moved to Essen, and I went to college in Münster, and I did what is called environment technology.
Environment technology.
Environment technology.
How do you say that in German, by the way?
Umwelttechnologie. I started off with pharmacy and didn't like it and changed to environment technology. And did this course I was telling you in electronic music as a sort of a thing on the side.
And how do they teach electronic music? I mean, do you all sit down in a circle and be terribly abstract, or does it resemble something like Einstein working on physics or something?
We actually had 3 machines there, which are called an ARP 2600 synthesizer, and learning how they work, because all analog synthesizers work the same way, and how to use them. And it required a bit of knowledge in music, and it required a bit of knowledge in physics, electronics.
Yeah, were these polysynths or mono synths?
Oh, that was before the days of the polysynth.
Oh, before the days of the polysynth.
They looked a bit like a
polysynth's the different ball game now. A polysynth is one that can play chords and several notes simultaneously. The monosynth is one that can only play one note at a time.
But you sacrifice versatility on the polysynth.
Do you?
Yeah, you do. Like the more amazing sounds, the really amazing sounds, you can only do them on a monostand, on a modular monostand. And it looks a bit like a telephone exchange. Looks strange, but it's fairly straightforward to operate once you get the hang of it. Once you understand them.
And you're not using them now, are you? Or do you plan to use
I'm
them?
hoping to get my own. I'm saving up the money to get my own.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And right now the guitar is primarily your.
I'm trying to learn to play the guitar at the moment.
Yeah. And now you mentioned the double bass. When was the last time you picked up a double bass and thumped away on one?
Oh, that must be about, hang on, it's exactly, almost exactly 12 and a half years.
12 and a half years. Oh, geez. So that's far and away at this stage, is it?
It is, yeah.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
A double bass is a beautiful instrument.
It is indeed, yeah. And
the next track that you selected there, speaking of music, is Biko. Now, earlier today you requested that I play 3 songs in particular, and one of them was Biko. Can I ask you why Biko was one of the songs that you selected?
It's just one of the most clever little arrangements on any pop song that I remember, not the last few years, but that I remember. It's one of the most clever arrangements, I think. It draws from so many different musical styles. There's a bit of African chanting in it, bush drums, there's just everything in it, and used well, not overdone. And I'm also a bit political minded, and Biko was a leader of the blacks in South Africa, and it's 7 years and 9 days since he's been murdered.
7 years and 9 days since he's been murdered. Okay,
yeah.
Stephen Biko, a track entitled Biko from Peter Gabriel's 3rd album. Biko. Peter Gabriel there fading out into the background, singing about Stephen Biko, a track entitled Biko. And we're with Gunther Beads, for lack of a better last name.
Big G.
Big G. And it's 26 minutes past the hour of 11 o'clock here on CCLR. You're listening to The Street Beat with Roger Gregg. And we've been talking to Gunther. We played one of his tracks a little bit earlier on, and now we just played a request for him, the Biko track just there. And now the second track on his tape is queued up. And I'm looking at the little information sheet, which he's kindly prepared for me. And it says, Instrumental Dance Music for Dogs, Part 1, Experiment with Different Rhythms Working Against Each Other, and Part 3, Rock Riff. Can I ask you, Gunther, what's the difference between an experiment with different rhythms working against each other, quote unquote, and just a few people goofing around making whatever noise happens to come to mind?
The difference really is that this is actually written down.
Yeah, and how do you actually...
And it's actually worked out.
I mean, instead of drumsticks, you use pencils.
No, the drummer would ideally have to play exactly what's written down, and he has to stick to that. And the guitarist is playing his own little rhythm, and hopefully the two of them.
Which is written down, is it?
Which is written down as well, or.
And that's what they're doing now, is it? What's what we'll soon hear.
That's what's done here. Yeah. Again, it doesn't come across too well because some of the guitar goes a bit under with the crude recording technique we used. But it might give you an idea. Actually, the part 2 of the Dance Music for Dogs is the first piece of music I've ever written.
And so it must be very old, is it?
It's very old, yeah.
Yeah. And who are the musicians, by the way, that are busy obeying everything written down in the score? Kind of, and the music stops every once in a while while they flip pages in the score, like.
They don't actually flip pages. They learned it just before we recorded it in a hurry, And that's Dak Butler playing the hi-hat. He plays with Cargo Cult, who were here 3 weeks ago.
And we'll be talking about later on when we go over the Street Beat weekend music calendar.
And that's none other than the famous Gertie playing a bit of synthesizer and a bit of electric guitar on this one. Gertie played with the Non-Attacks. And
in ancient history.
And a part of Cork history, I guess. And he's playing on an album by a guy called Stano, who is a poet from Dublin.
Stano. That was recently reviewed in Hot Press.
Yeah. It's going to do well too. Yeah. I think you better roll it off now.
Okay, here we go. Dance Music for Dogs. Gunther Big G doing an instrumental called Dance Music for Dogs, an experiment with different rhythms working against each other, and part two, which is just what was fading out there, was called The Rock Riff. Gunther, what the heck kind of music is that?
I don't know really what it is, it's just music,
Wow, man,
It's my musical ideas, I got them late at night, when everybody has gone to bed. I listen a lot to especially French composers that were working in the 20s and 30s, Maurice Ravel, Claude Debussy, and even more extreme, Edgar Varese, without whom I think modern music would sound totally different.
You sound like Frank Zappa now. Those are the big influences on him, along with Stravinsky.
I love Frank Zappa. I would love to be Frank Zappa.
You dance around the room at night when no one's looking, dressed up in Frank Zappa's dress.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of musical categories and so on and so forth, what do you think of the general malaise or general situation of modern music? It's hard to even use labels at this stage.
Well, labels have to be used, unfortunately, for marketing things. Certain people say I like new wave music, and if it's marketed as new wave music, then they like it. That's about it. To me, it's all music.
Yeah.
I couldn't stick a label on it. I couldn't. I think the next one you have queued up now is Marillion, is it?
Marillion, yeah.
Yeah. Now they're a new band. They only came up late last year. They started to appear on the scene, and I think it's totally impossible to stick a label on their music.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's any fairness in the music business at all, they are going to make it big. If there's any fairness, they're going to be massive.
Okay, and that's why you've chosen it. It's Garden Party by Marillion, and the date, and the date on it is 1983. So let's give it an ear. Okay, we're back with Gunther again, and you're listening to Street Beat, and this is Roger Gregg. Pete Ryan will be coming up in another 20 minutes because right now it's 20 minutes to midnight, and in the next 20 minutes you'll also be hearing the Street Beat. Taking his fingers out of his mouth, he repeats what he was attempting to say. And in a few minutes' time, you'll be able to hear the Street Beat weekend music calendar, which will go over all the rock gigs over the weekend. Okay, Gunther, that was your request there, Garden Party by Marillion. And now we're going to go to the last track of yours, and it's called Songs Like Cobweb.
Song called Like Cobwebs.
Song called Like Cobwebs.
Like Cobwebs. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And tell us a bit about this musical piece that you've written. Is it a rock opera? Is it a?
No, it's It's an audiovisual show. Has lights in it, lighting effects, lots of props, and it's called City, and it's about living in the city and what living in the city does to people. I'm not talking about Cork City. I'm talking about cities like London, Detroit, New York. It's basically a sequence of little scenes of music and visual effects.
And it's all written out.
It's all written out, yeah.
When will we be able to hear it and see it and experience this city, the audio-visual extravaganza?
As soon as I get the time to, and as soon as the producer gets the time to work it all out. It's written out, the songs are written, the music is written, the photos are not taken yet.
Mm-hmm. So it's in the works, but eventually it will be staged.
Eventually it will be staged, yeah.
Okay, so we will give it an ear anyways.
Yeah, this song is about desolation. It deals with people living in the city, the concrete desert, and isolating themselves from each other and not communicating anymore.
Not communicating anymore. Yeah. That certainly happens. Okay, here we go. Like Cobwebs, Big G Gunther. Like Cobwebs, Big G Gunther. That's an extract from his audio-visual masterpiece, I guess, or magnum opus, called City, which is in the works, and the Cork audience might be able to hear it sometime.
Yeah,
we
hopefully.
hope. Yeah. Okay, you selected one more single now. It's who is it? Monsoon. Ever So Lonely. Can I ask why you selected this last piece?
Because it's a recent, or fairly recent release, a couple of years ago, I guess, right in the middle of the post-punk and new wave thing, and was very successful, reached #1, I think, didn't it? Or at least the top 5. And yet it reminds me of the 60s when I was going around with colored shirts and everything. That's why I picked that, really.
Okay.
Just to show that it's always the same music. It doesn't. Music is timeless, really.
Okay, here we go. Monsoon for Gunther. He says it goes out especially to the girl who rides around town on the Honda Goldwing. So we'd like to thank Gunther for coming along tonight. And by the way, this is the Street Beat. So if you're interested in coming on the show ever, well, that's what we're here for.